I'm Greg Giuliano. I'm an executive coach, organizational change consultant, and author. I believe leaders have the power to shape the future and change people's lives. I also believe people who challenge the status quo and go beyond usual and ordinary are rare. They're willing to go to the edge and push farther, over and over again. When I find these ultra leaders, I love to talk with them. In each episode, I talk with ultra leaders to learn how they do what they do and how they keep growing as leaders. I promise you a full dose of ultra leadership from other ultra leaders just like you in every conversation. We're at the edge of another episode. Let's jump in. Welcome to another episode of Ultra Leadership. I'm really excited about today's episode. We're taking a little divergent turn here. Normally I talk with leaders inside organizations, but today I'm excited because I've got 4 folks with us today who work with leaders inside corporations. I'm joined with some terrific executive coaches and leadership experts that I've had the privilege to get to know. And they work with us at Ultra Leadership in delivering our Be a Great Coach program. And what we realize when we debrief as we go through the programs is that so many leaders are dealing with the same issues and are facing the same challenges. And these folks are coaches who are joining the episode today. They hear this firsthand and they coach these leaders to not only become better coaches as a way of leading and engaging their folks, but they help them solution some of their biggest challenges. And so I wanted to hear from our coaches today to really dig into, what are the themes that, almost every leader is, these are challenges and situations that almost every leader faces at some point and in many cases over and over and over again. So what are they hearing in terms of what are the challenges that people are bringing to coaching? And then what are the solutions that they are developing as a result of coaching? And then because we are engaging these leaders in the context of a learning experience to help them make the shift from managing to coaching to engage and empower their people, how are those leaders making those shifts? What are they doing in practical terms to get better at leading in general and coaching in particular? So I'm really excited to have these 4 folks here with me today. I'm joined so my friend Dave Dresden is here, an amazing executive coach and leadership development expert. And I'm also joined by Sina Johnson, again, all amazing coaches and people. Kristina Mangelsdorf is here, and Alex Patient is here. So I'm excited to have the 4 of you here today to be a part of this conversation. So welcome to Ultra Leadership.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we'll see. So let's do that. The first question there, that you're engaging these leaders, in our Be a Great Coach program, and they're from different continents, right? So we're working with leaders on, I think, 5 out of 7 continents right now, going through these programs. So you'd think, wow, there's a lot of differences because they're spread out all over the world, but there are really some consistent themes that they are bringing up when they come to you for coaching. So let's start there. When you ask them that question, what's going on? What do you hear? More consistently than some other things.
I'd also add that we're seeing people from many continents, but what we are hearing, I think, is also representative of the other clients we work with and have worked with for years. So it's pretty representative of people all over the place. The first thing that comes to mind for me is just the pressure and tendency to problem solve for their people, and the whole idea of developing people comes second to getting stuff done. And they're underutilizing people and they're not supporting them in their development necessarily. So I think the coaching work that's what I'm finding. I think others have this similar findings?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I hear a lot of that, and related to that, I think one of the big themes that I hear is about giving feedback. Less of a struggle to coach someone who is a high performer, more of a struggle to coach someone who maybe is not performing as well, and how to give that feedback and use coaching skills to help bring them along, both emotionally bring them along as well as performance wise bring them along.
Yeah, well said, Kristina. That is what all my coaching this week has all been about: feedback and how difficult it is. Someone can be a high performer, but there's this one piece they need to work on, and they're having a hard time giving the direct enough feedback and then scheduling those follow-ups and what that means and being direct enough about how it's impacting their job, their ratings, their effectiveness of the team, and really bringing it up to a level where they can understand how their behavior is impacting the company. So that's been a huge theme this week with all my coaching. And it's because they have the coaching skills, they've been working on their coaching skills through the Be a Great Coach program. They know that there's just a piece that they're missing, right? So when they come to coaching with us, it's nice that we can illuminate what part they're not doing, right? And a lot of times it's that accountability, that follow-up piece at coaching. It's been interesting. There's been this theme this week also about people wanting to be a servant leader, but they take it in the wrong context. They think it means hand-holding and letting someone off the hook and letting bad behavior continue because they understand what they're going through and they would care about the person. And so really bringing that up, you're really not serving the team by allowing those behaviors to continue. So I had several conversations where we're resetting what it means to really serve the team.
It's come up a couple of times this week, like Sina's just said for me. So it's one thing equipping them with the questions to ask to be able to have a really good feedback conversation. The part that's come up with senior leaders this week is, why are they still holding back? And it comes into that servant approach that they need to build that confidence in themselves and the motivation to overcome the barriers that they have in sharing direct feedback that may not land perfectly. So they need to dial aspects of their behavior up and certain aspects of their behavior down to get the job done. So even having those great questions, that's one part, but setting the mindset for then going into that room is the second part. And that's come through this week.
Yeah, not to jump ahead in terms of how they're solving things, but since we are pretty far along in this program, it's kind of what's current for us. And I think the idea of, and Sina knows that I point this out a lot, the idea that we are working with people, supporting them at like a granular level. These people a lot of them have been leading people for a long time, but they haven't been consciously having coaching and coaching conversations until we've been talking about it. And a lot of them are, even though some are quite senior, they are finding the support with what's a powerful question? How do you have them? Having that card in front of them with the questions that we talked about has been very valuable for them. But I'm appreciative of the fact they're also getting, we talk about it from the granular, like these are the skills to have coaching conversations. And at the meta level, we are supporting them in becoming coaches. How they do everything is done with like a coaching mindset. And they are starting to get that. They're going into situations curious. They're going in and incorporating these things without necessarily thinking about it. So it's always good to see the shift when they're starting to see the job is to develop people, and they're getting that. And then the feedback they may struggle with still, but they're definitely appreciating the granular stuff when they sit down to have these conversations, and they're recognizing like that's just how they think now. So I think the way we're approaching it, having the The group conversations where they can reflect on this stuff is very helpful. And then the material that we provide up front with the, like, this is how you do it, also is really helpful. So that combo, I think, has been really good for them. And this week, I've had a lot of conversations about it.
I love your point about that broader coaching mindset and how it's helping people. And it's been very interesting. I've had a number of conversations this week with people who are talking about how to influence, how to sell in ideas, how to build alignment. And coaching questions is one of the key things we've talked about, right? We've talked about how you really are aligning people one-on-one. You're not aligning a team collectively, and seeking to understand that individual's needs and perspectives, and using that coaching mindset going in rather than, hey, I have the solution for you, and pushing it down their throat, going in and asking them, right? What's going on? What isn't on track for you? What are your priorities? Some of those questions are really unlocking great dialogue that are enabling leaders to be better influencers. So I think your point is spot on.
Yeah. So we had someone come into one of the kickoff workshops to be a great coach. And she came in with the feedback from a skip level that she was a micromanager. And she could not process, like, how am I a micromanager? But by the end of day 2 of the kickoff, she was like, oh, like she realized all the places that she was micromanaging people on her team. And then she was like, oh, with her daughter as well, right? She realized that tendency to want things a certain way, and with her perfectionist mindset, was interfering with actually getting the best out of the people around her, including her daughter.
I had a really interesting conversation. It was last week. It was about micro and macro coaching. I've never heard these terms because we made them up. And it was largely because the individual that was trying to coach another person, they were very much focusing on the small problem, the tactical problem that their member of staff had brought them. And the coaching that we were discussing was, how do we take that up a level? Where else does this problem arise in your day-to-day? And that has led them down a very different path with their direct report to say, okay, we've got one instance of this. Where else does that show up in your day-to-day, week by week? How can we move from tactical to strategic? How do we go from instance to overall behavioral change? And now they're off and running. They have a whole new path to explore with that member of staff. And that's lovely to see.
And I think when I look more broadly necessarily than we're talking about this, because we're teaching people to coach and a lot of the conversations about direct reports, but also what's happening is there's a lot of coaching of them. So like we do with a lot of our clients who are there for all kinds of reasons, when you get to the coaching mindset, you are helping people be more aware of how they're behaving, how they show up, how they think, how their thinking affects what they see. And once people start doing that, for me, that's when I love doing it, because it's a little deeper, and it gets a little touchy at times because people start to question, like, oh, I always do this. And it always has this impact. And once you start recognizing, I don't think people are smart. So I listen to them differently when that's my impression of someone. And when when you see this stuff starting to register with people, that's when they really, because it goes across everything, and they start thinking about that, and then you send them off and ideally help them reflect upon it in the time, in between calls. And then they'll come back with the recognition of how their being has been impacting the problem that they've been seeing in other people. And it starts to shift. And once I think people start doing that, the mindset piece, that's where they're doing more internal work. So it's good that we're kind of combining all of that in the work that we're doing in the great coaching. And that I think towards the end of the program has been more evidence when I was asking for feedback, how, what's working for them in particular. That's where they're recognizing it. And it goes across outside of work too, families and kids and spouses. So I don't think we should underestimate that, even though we get into the nuts and bolts of how they do things. I think the reflection and the becoming self aware and understanding how they're impacting the situation is hugely valuable.
My favorite question around that from the great coaches, how do you get in your own way? How are you sabotaging it? And I've seen people use that with their directs, but then use it on themselves, not just in a coaching call, but through the week. Oh, I've got in my own way again. And once that question is rattling around in your head, it sticks. And to the point about this flows out of your work life into your home life. Yeah, I've started recognizing more for myself how I'm getting in my own way with my daughters, how I get in my own way with my own business growth, and it's seeping into into all of me, and it's a great thing to be able to reflect and sit back and put yourself back on course.
I want to go back to what something Dave said at the very outset, that when the people show up, the leaders are trying to drive results and they forget about the developing people part. And what I think what they learn is that developing people is integral to driving results, and that the performance conversations that many of them are putting off falls in that if you want to drive results, you have to lean into those performance conversations, which is giving people feedback and doing it in the context of coaching. Because and this is something that we hear a lot in our programs, and you hear it more than I do, is that coaching, is too soft. I want to get stuff. I need to get stuff done, and I need to drive results. And this coaching stuff is I'm just trying to help them and make them feel better. It's like, no, that's not it at all. That the point of this is that how do we elevate performance across the organization? And we know that engaged and empowered people perform at a higher level. They activate and they get stuff done. And so by leaning into coaching and leaning into those hard feedback conversations, we're actually creating a culture of accountability, which drives results. Because coaching and feedback isn't just about, oh, let's have a nice conversation. No, it's like, what's going on? What are your options to solve your biggest problems and challenges? And what are you going to do about it, right? What's that next step that you're going to take as you walk out of this coaching conversation? So it's very activating, and there's accountability baked into it. And I think that that's something consistently that all these folks who are bringing, oh yeah, I've got to give a performance conversation or give this person some feedback. It's in the context of, I want you to get better because we are about driving results. And if we all get better, we're going to have the results that we want. So helping leaders see that balance between driving results and developing people is really important. And the piece for me, and I just had a coaching conversation with a leader before we jumped on, and it was the same thing. It was about, he had to give feedback to a really high performer who thinks they're ready for the next role, but there's something about their process of how they deliver work that is just a complete roadblock, because that person's process isn't transparent and inclusive enough. And so the people who would be deciding that this person is ready, that's what they're fixated on. That the person's process that's great for the role that they're in, maybe, but it's holding them back from moving to that next role. And he needed to have this feedback conversation with this person, and he was all anxious about it. And so that's probably that's why he was avoiding having the conversation. And so a big piece of helping folks with getting better at feedback is really helping them develop the emotional intelligence, the ability to contain the anxiety that they have about having those kinds of conversations. It's almost never, I don't want to hurt their feelings. It's mostly, I don't want to be uncomfortable. And having this conversation is going to make me uncomfortable. And so our coaching is, okay, well, yeah, you're anxious about it. You don't know how the person will respond. But if you stay at the outset, you're doing this. My intention is to help you grow as a person and as a contributor. That's a way to help to minimize the possibility that they're going to react negatively to the feedback. So that's just my take on it. Everything that you're saying is 100%, and I just had a call about that as well. That's a consistent theme that folks come into coaching with in the program. So as you're coaching them on their big challenges, and the big thing for us is that people we coach own their situation and own their solutions. What are they figuring out? Oh, I'm going to try this and see if this works. So what solutions are they coming up with in your conversations around their challenges?
I have this great example of someone. She went through the Great Coach program, and she got to her position by being a subject matter expert, and was always, everyone would just come to her and she would fix problems all day long, and she was getting really burnt out. So she changed all of her one-on-ones to coaching one-on-ones, and she asked everyone to come with what outcome they're trying to achieve and at least 3 options to get there. And so she said it was super awkward for several months. People were like, what am I doing? I need my own options. I need to come up with my own solutions. But 3 months in, and she's like, it is working. She's like, it is so much fun to work again. And her team was happy. Their engagement scores went up. They were like empowered to actually solve their own problems. They weren't relying on her all day long. It was just like transformation for her. Like, this is of the work that she does and the team that she leads.
And I think having the development like goal and objectives as part of the ongoing conversations, as opposed to the every couple of months you have a conversation about it. Like I encourage my clients to literally take a separate part of every one-on-one to talk about the developments, both yours and your your directs. And this way it's always top of mind, and they're also finding it refreshes it. Like our group coaching, they do the big kickoff and we learn all the skills in the group coaching calls. Just by sitting with us and their coach, you remember to think about this again. So having the reflection on why this is important and how you pay attention to it is one way that they're continuing to do it. Like, make it part of the structure of your one-on-ones, and have these group conversations or your coaching conversations, or pair up with people so you keep it top of mind when you're so busy, getting stuff done. And when people have been successful at that, they're finding it much easier, I think, to stay on track generally.
I completely agree with the, ring fencing that one-on-one time and focusing that. And I think as part of that, what I'm seeing people really shift to is a mindset of, rather than I'm asking these questions to get them to the right solution, I'm asking these questions to, Sina always says, stay curious. And I feel like people are getting that. And Greg, you talked before about people coming into this and saying, I don't have time to coach, right? And if you come into it with I'm just using coaching to get people to the right answer that I already know, then darn, yes, it is absolutely a time drain. If you're using coaching to help people learn how to identify their own solutions and perhaps come to a better solution than you could have otherwise, then suddenly it is incredibly empowering. And one of the things that I have heard repeatedly from people sort of as we're wrapping this program and people are saying what they got out of it, they're like, wow, this is actually saving me time, both physical time in terms of I don't have to be there for everybody, but also that emotional time of, gosh, I don't have to have all of the answers, right? If I don't know, let me use coaching and let me stay genuinely curious and let me see what comes out of it. And that's really liberating for people, I'm finding.
And the mindset thing, and them working on themselves, helping them remember to take care of themselves and to work on how their own thoughts are impacting their levels of stress and they're not having enough time. So that is part of the process of making work more efficient and easier and enjoyable and effective. It's funny because we talk about them saying they don't have time to coach. I'm finding, like Sina, you mentioned how when they are coaching, they're like, they want to help, or they're talking about doing it, helping people. That's when I remind them, like, you're not helping people. You are getting people to do their job and to deliver what they're supposed to deliver. And that's their value. Yes, it feels good, and that's good. We're happy, give back to the people who are younger and all of that. But you're doing it to get your stuff done. And this is a good way to do it. So either they're like, they don't have time, or they're doing it to be nice to develop people. Like, yes, it's nice, but that's really not why you're doing it.
Dave keeps it real all the time. It's like, no, this isn't just so we can be nice. I'm not going to be the nice guy. I want to get stuff done. And this is the most effective way to do it.
I was in a situation it was a group coaching, probably about a month and a half back. And we were talking about one person's problem in their workspace. And they were talking about systems issues and yada, yada, yada. And we took a pause and we said, right, what has this person said? Kind of level one listening. And people could play back what they were thinking about when he was talking. So they were coming out, oh yeah, I've had a situation like that, right? And they were ready to share how they too have been in a situation like that. I said, okay, that's level one. Level two, what's going on in terms of your laser focus? Were you able to really notice when they were leaning in, their body language, things like that? A smaller proportion of people were able to do that. And then level three, what's really going on for this guy? What's going on between the lines? And I asked them to name what was going on. And one of the ladies in this group coaching said, untethered. He's untethered. And he said, yes, that's exactly what I am. And then they started coaching him about what it's like to be untethered. What does that feel like? And it was it was a slowing down the whole process to figure out, what do we really need to coach on here to solve the issue that actually was a 10,000 feet up issue that was nothing to do with this small factor in front of his eyes right there and then.
Yeah, that's a big mindset shift, right? Instead of trying to coach to solve the problem, you're coaching the person to reshape their experience. That's totally different.
But it takes courage to share your intuition, because it can be wrong. And the fascinating part is, when you're wrong with your intuition, the person will correct it for you.
Yeah.
And now you're a step closer to knowing what it is. And when we realize that we can be free and easy with our intuitions, you can't lose.
Yeah.
And that was a nice moment.
And we remind them that they can be wrong, and they can present it as, this is not a diagnosis. This is this is how I'm seeing it, or this is the story I'm telling myself about this. Is that accurate? Or how does that? So this way, when that allows them to put it out there in a way that can be heard from the other person, it's objective, and it's not telling them what's wrong with them. It's inviting them, this is how I see it. Is that true or not? So you can talk about your things, because you're not like making people defensive about it.
And there's an underlying trust that is needed for that, and that gets built, through a coaching relationship. If you as a manager are a coach and you are good at listening and truly asking questions because you want to know how the person is doing and what's going on, that allows you to then get into some of these bigger, not just the tactical problem, but into some of the bigger behavioral or what's going on more broadly, and have people actually open up to you there.
And if you've taken the trouble to tell me something that's hard to tell me, I start to appreciate the relationship, because I get that it was hard to say and it wasn't great to hear, but it was helpful to hear. So you do, by having these difficult conversations, not only is it like you get through it, but you are building relationship by telling people things that may be hard for others to say, that they appreciate hearing, even though it's difficult.
We all need someone who cares enough about us to tell us when we have spinach in our teeth. Some people would let me go all day long with spinach in my teeth. There's a handful of people who will tell me, right? And so that I know that they care about me enough to tell me when I have spinach in my teeth. Sina, you told me a story yesterday or the other day, a couple of days ago, about a leader who had an unlock around their behaviors were communicating, I don't trust you. And their solution was to start to demonstrate, I trust you more through not just their words, but their actions and the results that that person had. Tell that story. That's a fabulous story.
My gosh. And actually, I have two, they're both around trust and they had different impacts. It was very interesting, all in the same week. It's wild, right? So this leader, their direct report came to them and they were stuck on something and they just could not make a decision. And so this leader was like, you know the system better than I do. Like, you decide what to do with that. You're going to make a better decision than I am. It's like, I trust you. Do what you think is best. And it just unlocked this person because they had had this kind of fear of getting it wrong. It unlocked this person and they got so many things done in a short amount of time just by the leader saying, and I trust you. And he did really trust him. He just hadn't ever explicitly said that. And he decided not to jump in and solve something for him, but let him run with it. Yeah, it was such a beautiful moment. And then I had someone that their manager had told them that they trust them to run with something. And the person was in tears because they felt incapable. Like, how could this person trust me to do this? Like, they had this moment of self-confidence of just in the tank because they were being asked to work at a new level with their peers in a new way. And when this person explained what they were asked to do and what they're entrusted with, I was like, I don't know anyone else that would be more perfect than you to do this. Like, just tell me what you want to do in the first 30 days. Break it down. And she just blossomed. Like, she just had to have that moment, she couldn't believe that this person would trust her with this. And she had to it took some time to really believe it. And then she was like, yeah, I do know what to do next.
You had to let that in.
Yeah. So everyone has a different time frame to let that in. So
we started talking about what are the topics or what are the things that we address with our coaching, both here and elsewhere. And things around trust clearly, play big parts in this when you're working with people, with their colleagues. And at times, people don't delegate. It's like, well, why don't you delegate? Either they think they'll do it right, or they don't fully trust that other people could do it well. And then what are complications between people, direct reports or peers even? It's like a level of, do you trust each other? And how do you demonstrate trust? And is the issue one of trust? Like, you're bothered by something, or you don't think they're doing something well, like, step back and say, you don't really trust that person. And once you realize that, then you can work with it and figure out, well, what is it that you don't trust? It's not competent, not reliable. But until you recognize it as a trust issue and not something else, like Alex, not the surface level thing, it's like, well, why is this a problem? Because you don't really trust people, or you're telling them in some way that you don't trust them, and they see that. So you don't even know it, but that's what you're telling them. So I find trust as a topic is something that we certainly like. It's valuable to pay attention to, and it comes up often, at least in my stuff.
We could do this all day long, Greg.
Yeah, I know. I love this. I learn every time I am in a room with the four of you. So I really appreciate the time. So you see people when they show up to begin our Be a Great Coach program, and they think they're already great coaches, or they think I don't like coaching, and then we throw them into it. And so I'm curious, as you've watched hundreds of people now go through this, what's the shift? How are they making those shifts, and what are some of the ahas that, if somebody's listening now and they're a people manager and, yeah, I probably could or, should coach more. What are the ways that some of our folks who've gone through our program are making the shifts that people listening could go, oh, I can do that?
I can give an incorrect answer if that's right.
Yeah.
Incrementally and in jumps. So there is a perception that I am a solutions manager and now tomorrow I've done my course and now I'm a coach manager. And it doesn't happen like that. You get a little bit better. You stumble through a one-to-one. You get the order of the questions wrong. You say them wrong. You interrupt somebody, but you're 1% or 2% better than you were yesterday. And I think that's how they make the shift from manager to coach in very small, gradual stages. And to trust that this not only works, but it's in the benefit of the people that they care the most about. So I think that's how it works, very, very slowly. And then sometimes there's a kind of a big jump when you realize, actually, this works. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to do it more. I'm going to take more opportunities. I'm going to expand my coaching. I'm not just going to coach my direct reports. I'm going to coach my peers. I'm going to coach my boss. And off they go.
So I'll build on that because I think that people who make that shift need to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable because, to your point, Alex, right, they're not always going to get it right. And people don't like to try something new sometimes because they're afraid of failing at it. What I found a number of people do is they're actually very open with their direct reports about the fact that they are learning to be a better manager through coaching skills. And here's how these coaching skills help you. And here's why it may feel a little bit artificial at first and it may feel frustrating. And I want you to give me feedback on, how it's working and let's do this together. And again, that's all part of that trust relationship. But I think I've found at least that the people who are open to having those conversations with their directs are growing and learning and it's working.
And I think how we know it's working, or what at least for my measure is, we were talking about things that people are doing or how they're getting there. For me, it's a switch of having people look at not what you're doing, but who are you being? Like, how are you showing up? And that's where people respond to you as a person, not what you do, what you know. It's like, who are you being with these people? And you have, when you are paying attention to that, and it doesn't end. Like, this is an ongoing process, and you keep, growing with it, and you learn to like it. And what Sina and I, we did a group thing a while ago, and we were really impressed when we talked. We recognized that all these science, people who are IT people who are, not necessarily people. By the end of the program, every single one of them, they were most proud of the work that they were doing developing other people, which was very different, would never have guessed it at the beginning of the year. And that's what we see, that people shift and start to see their job is to develop people and create the conditions to get stuff done, not to do it. And they really like the idea of supporting other people to get stuff done. So I think when I see people getting to that place and recognizing that's their job, and then they start enjoying their job. So that's how I think I at least recognize how they're getting there.
There's always this favorite part of mine when we're in person in the group and we just give them 10 minutes to have a coaching conversation, and they can only ask questions and just tell them it's a sandbox and you get to be awkward and uncomfortable and it's just practice. And at the end of that 10 minutes, people are so joyful because they've just things that have been in their mind weighing them down for months, and a 10-minute coaching conversation brought them to what they're going to do next. And having that experience when we do that together just really jump starts okay, I can coach. I can give this a real go and try it out because they have that success.
I think if you come into coaching thinking it's soft and woolly, when you realize some of the latter steps are around what action are you going to take, when are you going to take it, what's the accountability we're going to put around it. When they realize those steps actually drive concrete action, that sometimes brings other people on board, that this is not just a nice chat. Sometimes it's a horrible chat, right? But it drives actual change. And that leads people to stick with it. I've seen people do some pretty bold experiments through coaching and actually frame them as experiments because it gives people a bit more leeway to try something. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, refine it. But when they see it drive performance, that's the other kind of nail in the coffin in their change. Actually, that's a bad metaphor, isn't it?
And what else is, we're talking about coaching today, but yeah, you're not always doing coaching, but we're really talking about leading, right? We're supporting people in being leaders, and you're a leader when you're a good coach, you're a much better leader. So that really does, like when you look at it from that perspective, that's what they're there for, right? That's what their job is. So the coaching thing becomes language for the much broader, how are these people leading their company or their business units, and coaching them, how we teach coaching and talk about it. We're really helping people be better leaders, period.
100%. Yeah. So our friend David Isaacs, who is one of the co-originators of the World Cafe with Juanita Brown, David says that a primary role of leaders is to design, convene, and host conversations that matter. And there are lots of conversations happening in our organizations that don't matter because they don't do anything to drive the business forward, or they don't do anything to develop people. And coaching as a conversation design does both of those things at the same time, right? So the conversation matters because you're helping somebody unlock something, move something forward, listening more deeply and getting to that underneath thing, like Alex's person who's actually, I'm feeling untethered. Oh, well, let's coach about that versus the little tactical thing that you had, right? So really helping people get to what's really root cause, what's driving their frustration at the moment, and helping and coaching them to figure out a way to tether themselves and following through on that example rather than fixing something for them. And Dave, you hit on it, right? At the end of the day, this is just leadership, right? My job is to enable the positive transformation of the organization, the team, and this person. And coaching isn't the best way, but it's, of all the other ways that I've looked at, it's the best way, right? So until something better comes along, I think coaching is the best way to drive accountability, to drive results, and to develop people at the same time. I could do this all day, but I think our listeners, they got to go and do something else now. So I think we're good. I want to say thank you to the four of you. I really appreciate your just being awesome people, the expertise and the experience that you bring to the leaders that we are privileged to engage with is enormous. And as I said, I learn every time I am with you. So to those of you who are listening, you check the comments down below. There's a link to all four of these wonderful people down there. And if you want to coach, any one of these four people would be awesome for you. So, take your pick. And if you want to be a great coach to your organization, there's a link there too that we would love to talk with you about bringing the Be a Great Coach program to your organization. So thank you, Sina and Kristina and Alex and Dave for spending this time with me today, for sharing your wisdom and your experience with our listeners. I like to end with gratitude, so I wanted to make sure that you feel my gratitude for you as people and as coaches and as leaders. So maybe we'll do a quick around the horn, something you're grateful for today, and we'll send everybody on their way. Sina, you're first. And then you pick who goes next.
Okay. I am just grateful for all of you. I just love being with you. You just made my day, my weekend, my next week. So thank you. Thanks for inviting us, Greg. Dave, you're next.
I can't say anything but the same thing. Thank you for bringing us together. Thank all of you. I have a great time whenever I get to see you. It's not often enough. And it's made my day. And I don't like working on Fridays. So this is, this is nice. So I'm
We got Dave to work on a Friday.
Thank you all. Good to see you. Alex.
I'm grateful to be invited onto this, Greg. 5 years ago, I never thought I'd be sat here talking about coaching. I was a mile away. And now here I am being a coach, talking with other coaches about coaching. So I'm really happy about that.
You were a buttoned up banker, and now look at you.
Yeah. Kristina.
I mean, I hate to be boring, but I'm feeling that same level of gratitude for this. And I'm grateful for people whose job it is to listen and seek to understand others. And I will just leave it at that, given our current environment right now. But I am truly, truly grateful for the good listeners on this call and out there in the world.
Thank you. Thanks, Kristina. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sina. And thank you for listening. I really appreciate the comments from our community that we have built here of ultra leaders working to get better at the work of leadership and the work of coaching to develop people and drive results in our organizations. If you like the episode today, please let us know. We appreciate your comments all the time. You can also, if you like this, we have a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn that you can subscribe to. Also, check out our YouTube channel at Ultra Leadership. We are building a community of leaders who are on this continuous journey of learning and development and getting better on behalf of our people and our organizations. So until next time, I'll see you out on the trail, and let's all keep getting better together.
If you're enjoying Ultra Leadership, please take a minute and give us a review wherever you find your podcasts. And please stay in touch. Sign up for our Ultra Leadership newsletter at ultraleadership.com. Now, before you jump to your next meeting, I invite you to reflect on what you heard today. What stood out for you? What insight might you want to incorporate into your leadership practice? Until next time, remember, as a leader, you always have the power to shape the future and change lives. So go to the edge and push farther. Thanks for listening.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.